time to get started, and I think I said hi to everyone except Laura. So Laura, good morning to you. Good morning to everybody, and glad that you're here. And if you'll take a look over here to the right, you'll see Carl and Vicki, and glad to have them back with us. Vicki, it's been a little while since she's been able to be out. Great to see them this morning. Great to see all of you. Just to keep in mind, we just got a number of things going on. I think the ladies have a craft day next Saturday, and I think you're continuing the Bible class, next Saturday as well. So that's kind of a good thing for them to get together and do that. Tonight, come back tonight at 5 o'clock, and I'm going to be talking about, it's the first Sunday of the month, so I will continue my series on the subject of leadership. Very, very important, whether we're talking about Point Pleasant or some other congregation, leadership. Not too many subjects more important than that one. Also, and you'll be hearing a little bit more about this a little bit later on, we have a gospel meeting coming up in April. It's March already, so we've got to be thinking about that meeting with Eric Owens. Good to have all of you here today, and let's begin our Bible study. We are in chapter 36 of Genesis, chapter 36, and we are moving right along, and we'll see if we can cover some ground here today. Chapter 36, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. This is basically Moses outlining the family and the generations that followed Esau. And this is obviously, the Lord believes that chapter 36, that this is important information. It would be more important for the original readers, for the children of Israel, than it is probably for us. As they would later on come into the promised land, this is going to give them some information about who some of these people are who are living there. How much of that information got passed on down through the children of Israel during their time in Egypt? Do you recall how long they were in Egypt? About 400 years. That seems like a really long time. It is a long time, right? For 400 years. And people are not living that long by the time we get to those 400 years. So, but when you think about Moses and you think about Joshua after him and you think about others, a lot of things are getting passed on to the children of Israel in these situations, and in particular, details pertaining to the promise that God gave to Abraham. Okay, so Moses really seems to be someone who is knowledgeable and is ready, faith-wise more than anything else, ready to take leadership of the children of Israel. But before we get to that, we have Genesis 36 and following. So this is kind of I'm just going to give kind of a summary here of Esau. He's still son of the promise. He's still connected to Isaac and to Jacob. To Isaac and Abraham, still connected to them. Esau, of course, went in a different direction than his father wanted to go in when it came to choosing wives, and he chose wives of the Canaanites, unlike Abraham and his father. So we have the immediate family beginning in verse 1 of Esau. Esau, we're told a number of times, like maybe 3 times in this chapter, that the Edomites are to be identified with Esau. That's an important matter because later on the children of Israel are going to encounter the Edomites when they come into the promised land. We're introduced here to his wives in verse 2. 2 wives, one a Hivite and one a Hittite, and they would both be Canaanites, but the Hivites and the Hittites are from a little bit different areas there. I believe it's the Hittites there from all the way up into eastern the eastern Turkey area. And then Basemath, she's a little different because she's the daughter of Ishmael, okay? So that doesn't go very far back, and so Ishmael, of course, would be, technically speaking, the uncle of Esau. So we have some of those connections there being made, and then verses 6 through 8, we're told what happens here between Jacob, a little bit of what happens between Esau and Jacob. Both of these men have too much family and livestock, too many possessions. The land isn't able to sustain both of them, and so Esau takes his clan and his possessions, and they move pretty much southeast, below the Dead Sea, into the Mount Seir region, which is also going to be called Edom. Okay, so they're going to take possession of that land. So Esau, his name, so to speak, is changed to Edom. You remember Jacob, his name is changed to Israel. Verse 11, just kind of something to just kind of think about. We read here the sons of Eliphaz and there's 5 names mentioned here. This may very well be the land of Edom and Mount Seir, just below the Dead Sea, again. This may very well be the land of Job, okay, of Job. Because you remember one of Job's 3 friends is called Eliphaz the Timite, or Eliphaz of Teman, okay. So this perhaps, it's just a perhaps, that would be the case. And then in verse 12, we're introduced to one of Esau's sons from a concubine, and that son would be named Amalek. And the children of Israel are going to encounter the Amaleks, and they will become one of the Amalekites. They will become one of Israel's bitterest enemies. So they're introduced here in chapter 36. And then we find in verse 15, we find that this clan of Esau is growing and it's expanding, where now you have kind of sub-clans coming into being as time goes on. And so we're introduced in verse 15 to a number of chiefs. Thank you for not expecting me to read all of these names, okay? Because that would take us a lot of time. And then we're introduced in verse 20 to someone who is the sons of Seir, the Horite. The Horites are actually in this land before the Edomites get there, and they are dispossessed pretty much from this land. And like the Israelites will dispossess the Canaanites of their land, or at least attempt to do so. They're commanded to do so, but they're not very successful in that and continue to have trouble. You know, here's the thing, later on, the children of Israel, under the leadership of course, Moses first and then Joshua, they are commanded to rid that land of Canaan of all the Canaanites. They fail to do so. And because they fail to do so, they are a continual thorn in their sides for a great length of their existence. Trouble comes when we are not obedient to the Lord. Verse 24 is interesting because it's the only antidote in this chapter, okay? And we don't really know what it means and what it's talking about. Apparently the children of Israel would have been familiar with this, where this, verse 24, this was Anna who found the water in the wilderness as he pastured the donkeys of his father Zibeon, okay? We have no understanding of what that event was, but apparently children of Israel would have known something about that we don't have any knowledge of. And going on, verse 31 is important because 31 through about 39, again, the offspring of Esau, of Edom, is growing and expanding, where they are now to be considered a nation. Okay, now they're a nation, and now you have the language of kingdoms and kings being mentioned. So there are 8 kings mentioned here, kings of Edom, long before there was a king in Israel. Okay, that time is coming. This is probably, beginning in verse 31 through 39, this is probably takes us up to the period of the judges. Okay, probably. So 8 kings are mentioned here, kings of Edom. And that's pretty much all you have. Again, regional leaders perhaps being mentioned in verse 40 through 43, verse 43 being the last time that Esau is mentioned here. We are reminded he is the father of the Edomites. The death of Esau is not recorded, okay? And we don't know why that is. Maybe it's because, going all the way back, maybe it's because he sold his birthright. Who knows, okay? But it is not told, is not recorded that he slept with his fathers, okay? Because he didn't. He wasn't buried, okay, with Isaac or Abraham. What happened to Esau, exactly how he died, when all of that occurred, we don't know, okay? But not very much is said about that. So going on to chapter 37, and in the book of Genesis, one of the most familiar stories to most of us is the story of Joseph and what's going on with him and his experiences and God blessing him and being with him. Joseph, you remember, he's the son of Rachel, and Rachel is Jacob's most beloved. And we're going to read that Joseph had a couple of dreams that were very, very irritating, okay, to his brothers. So we begin here looking at chapter 31. Jacob remains really a dominant character as this chapter begins, even as the story of Joseph has the most prominence here. It's interesting to note that while Joseph assumes prominence in the narrative for the next couple of chapters, God is never said to speak directly to him, although it is said a number of times that God is with him, okay? And it says that more so than it says almost any other character, okay, in the book of Genesis, any other personality. But it says it again and again that God is with Joseph. But again, there's never any record of God speaking directly to him. Doesn't mean it didn't happen. It just means there's no record of that happening. God did speak directly to Abraham. He spoke directly to Isaac and to Jacob. Why not Joseph? Maybe because Joseph is not going to be in the Messianic line. Maybe, okay? He's not in the Messianic line at all. So just some interesting things that happen here in chapter 37. We're looking at verses 1 through 7 of Joseph's relationships with his family. Okay, verses 1 through 11, and 2 primary relationships are being showcased here. First of all, his relationship with his father, and then his relationship with his brothers. So chapter 37 is fairly easy to outline and investigate. Anyway, we read here, just a couple of verses here. Now Jacob dwelt in the land where his father was a stranger, in the land of Canaan. This is the history of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, pretty young, isn't it, was feeding the flock with his brothers, and the lad was with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives, and Joseph brought a bad report of them to his father. Okay, now that's going to get on the brother's nerves, right? Because what does that make Joseph? Kind of makes him kind of like a tattletale, right? Okay, he's hanging out and supposedly working side by side or spending time with his brothers. But if the brothers make a goof, if they do something, bad behavior of some kind, then Joseph is going to go straight to his father and report all of that to the father. So he's not one of the guys, is he? He's not one of the group, okay? By these actions, he's kind of putting himself out there and in a bad light. Verse 3, now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, Jacob that is, because he was the son of his old age. Also, he made him a tunic of many colors. Okay, a couple of things here. Jacob loved Joseph more than he did the other sons. Now, you recall that there has been trouble in the family because parents have chosen favorites, all right? Remember Rebekah and Isaac? They had two sons, Jacob and Esau, and they had their favorites, okay? And that was not a good thing. Rebekah's favorite was Jacob. Isaac's favorite was Esau, and that created a problem. It creates a part of the story. It's a great part of the story and of the movement of the family all the way getting down to Egypt. But trouble comes because of playing these favorites. You might think in these stories that parental favoritism is probably the least of some of the worries and some of the events that occur, but that seems to be at least one component, and it is definitely one of the components here. Joseph was the son of Jacob's old age. Now there is another son, right? There's a younger son below Joseph, right? Who's that? Benjamin. Okay, Benjamin. But both of them are full brothers. Jacob's their father. Rachel is their mother. Now, why isn't Benjamin the favorite? Okay, probably, don't know for sure, but he's the youngest, and he just hasn't grown up yet and had any prominence. Okay, he's not out there in the field working and all of that. He's, I guess, just too young for that. Okay, so he hasn't. Jacob's a busy guy, and he's got all of this livestock and all of his family members and all of these sons to take care of. Probably Benjamin is just not on his radar, okay? But Joseph is. Joseph, 17 years old. How old is Benjamin? Well, we don't know. Maybe 10, 11, 12. He's just not on Jacob's radar yet. Bill. Sure. Yeah, yeah. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes all the sense in the world. There's a pecking order when it comes to the wives and the concubines, okay? Rachel's first, right? I mean, she's the one, and then her children would be first, okay, in prominence, and then Leah, and then the other two. So there you go. That's right. And how that translated into the relationships of the brothers, well, there's a factor there. Okay, yeah. Yes, that's true too, yeah. Could be some leftover grief and sorrow and kind of I'm mad at you kind of feelings, perhaps, yeah. Benjamin, when he was born, that led to Rachel's death. And so who knows, that may be kind of a leftover emotional detachment between him and Benjamin. Who knows for sure, but that part is not explained, but Joseph is definitely identified as his favorite, children of their old age. Rachel was his favorite, and Joseph was her firstborn son. Okay, so you can probably understand, put the puzzle together there. And then you have something going on here, maybe, shall we say, the wild or reckless or irresponsible dispositions of the elder brothers. Maybe that wasn't as likable to Jacob as well. And then Joseph was different, maybe a little bit more refined, a little more gentle disposition, more responsive to his father. There was definitely, according to verse 2, something bad going on in the behavior of the two brothers that Joseph had been spending time with. Anyway, what we find here is that then Joseph made this garment, this special garment, or had it made by someone, one of the servants perhaps, but he gave this special garment to Joseph, and the idea is that this is kind of an outer garment kind of thing, and it would have been covering the whole body, all of the sleeves, and maybe all the way down to the ankles. It's not necessarily, it could have been many colors. There were many colors involved in it. It could just be that it was ornamented in a special way. I don't know about the fabric itself was different colors. That's how we usually envision it anyway. But the original language doesn't necessarily suggest that. Many colors, yes. There are many colors somewhere in this special garment. But you'll notice if this is an outer garment and Joseph is wearing it, okay? I mean, he seems to be wearing it around, okay? It's not something he just puts on special occasions. He's wearing it, and he's wearing it around the brothers, okay? So everybody can see this garment. And when he goes into the field to check on his brothers, okay, as we're going to read here, he's going to go check on his brothers. What's he doing? He's wearing the garment. And you wouldn't think that you would be wearing a garment, in that kind of garment, in that situation, but that's what Joseph does. Joseph is very proud of this garment that he's gotten from his father, and he's wanting to show it off. Okay? Maybe not advisable, but that's what he's doing. And of course, Jacob made him this garment in order to be worn, not to sit in the closet somewhere, but to be worn, and no doubt to be worn proudly. And so this is just kind of an interesting part of this story that Moses brings out. So beginning in verse 4, and we've seen already in the verses now as well prior to that, Joseph's relationship with his brothers. Okay, not good, and it's said again and again. You can't miss it. Okay, the brothers don't care much for Joseph. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. Okay, they couldn't think of anything to say. What did our mothers and grandmothers say? If you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. And they couldn't think of anything nice, encouraging to say to Joseph, and so they couldn't even speak peaceably to him. Now, Joseph had a dream. Okay, so if all of this wasn't rubbing the brothers the wrong way, this is really going to get under their skin. Now, Joseph had a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they hated him even more. So they hated him, and now they're going to hate him even more. So he said to them, please, this first dream, please hear this dream which I have dreamed. And they're probably, when he says that, they're probably rolling their eyes. Okay, they're probably saying, oh no, we got to listen to him again. And there we were, binding sheaves in the field, which Joseph probably didn't do a lot of anyway, but he's putting himself in there with the group. There we are, all of us are working, and we're binding sheaves in the field. And then behold, my sheaf arose and also stood upright. And indeed, your sheaves stood all around and bowed down to my sheaf. Okay, well, that's interesting. But isn't this interesting too? Jacob himself is no stranger to dreams, right? So when he hears later on, when he hears that his son Joseph is having dreams, you kind of gotta think about what's going through Jacob's mind. God gave me dreams. Is God giving these dreams to Joseph? So then we come to the next dream, verse 8 though first. And his brother said to him, shall you indeed reign over us, or shall you indeed have dominion over us? So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. And granted, how could they have ever imagined that Joseph would indeed have dominion over them? Not at this point. That seems completely unimaginable. So here's the second dream. Then he dreamed still another dream and told it to his brothers and said, look, I have dreamed another dream, and this time the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars bowed down to me. Okay. So he told it to his father. His father's involved now, and to his brothers. And his father rebuked him and said to him, what is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall your mother and I and your brothers indeed come to bow down to the earth before you? And his brothers envied him. Okay, envied him. Probably the force of that. Envy and hatred are very close together. Okay, they couldn't stand him. But interesting, his father kept the matter in mind. I've always kind of thought about this, about Joseph. Should he have, he had these dreams. Obviously, they're given to him by God. It doesn't say that, but it is foretelling the future of what's going to happen in relationship to Joseph and his brothers. Was it wrong to tell them the dreams? Now, one interesting thing about Jacob, we don't know when Jacob had his dreams or his visions and his encounters with the Lord and wrestling with the angel. There's never any record, as far as I know, unless you can remember better than I can, that he told anybody about those incidents. Okay, now he may have passed that on, okay, but we don't know if he ever told anything. But Joseph is very much about telling his brothers and his father about these dreams. And I would have thought, maybe if Joseph, he's 17 years old, right? So, maybe his maturity level was not there yet, and he's thinking, if I tell this dream, my brothers, he's already got to be picking up that his brothers don't care much for him. And so here we are. Should I even bring this up? Okay, should I tell them this dream? But he does. He tells them the dream, and, and they hate him even more. Yeah. 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 Okay. Okay. Mm. Well, he tells them the dream. Yeah. Yeah, you would kind of think if we didn't know the rest, we would kind of think, oh, Joseph is going to go into prominence here, and he does to a degree, yes. Yeah. Yeah, he will be the cause, of course, of all of the people going into Egypt, but beyond that, he's not a part of the Messianic line, and so Interesting. It's just an interesting account here. And so we have this kind of this rebuke by Jacob in verse 10, but also he thinks about what he's. I'm glad to see. I'm glad to see. I'm sorry. Maybe a little bit negative about Jacob, but I'm glad to see that he's thinking about things now. Okay, and so he rebukes Joseph, and his brothers hate him. They envy him. His father kept these things in mind. Well, we read in beginning in verse 12, another part of this, well, if we're outlining this, the selling of Joseph into slavery. Then his brothers went to feed their father's flock in Shechem. Brothers always working. They're always working, okay? And Joseph, though, he's reporting things to his father. And Israel said to Joseph, "Are not your brothers feeding the flock in Shechem? Come, I will send you to them." So he said to him, "Here I am. Present, I'll do whatever you want me to do, Father." And he said in verse 14, "Please go and see if it is well with your brothers and well with the flocks, and bring back word to me." So he can count on Joseph to go and investigate and bring back a report. And so that's what Joseph does. And he's wearing that coat, okay? He's wearing those garments that his father gave him, okay? Doesn't put on work clothes, okay? He goes and wears this garment. Verses 15 and 17, won't take the time to read that, but that's a transition. There's interaction between Joseph and someone else here, and this other individual points out where the brothers are located. He found them in Dothan, verse 17. So when Joseph is coming, I don't know, over the hill, and still a great way off, they can see him coming, probably because of his coat, all right? And maybe if it's got ornaments on it, maybe it's flashing in the sun or whatever, you don't know. But they can see him coming, a mile away, as we say. And so they begin conspiring. Okay, this is our chance. Father is nowhere around, and it's just us and Joseph, and let's take care of this. Let's act and get rid of him. And they said to one another, "Look, this dreamer is coming. Come therefore, let us now kill him and cast him into some pit, and we shall say, some wild beast has devoured him. We shall see what will become of his dreams." Now, they want to kill him. Okay, they're going to kill him and throw him in a pit, which means he will be hidden and maybe his body will never be found. Okay, and that's what they want. That's what they want to happen. Reuben, on the other hand, the eldest brother, verses 21 and 22, he steps in and says, no, we can't do that. We can't sink that low. We can't kill our own flesh and blood. And so let's just put him in the pit and not kill him, thinking, verse 22, that he'll come back a little bit later on and get Joseph out of the pit. So the brothers want to kill him and put him in the pit. Reuben says, no, let's put him in the pit and keep him alive, and then, maybe teach him a lesson or something like that, to keep his words to himself, his dreams to himself, his coat to himself, and I'll come back and get him and take him to his father. Well, by the way, I don't know if it's a big deal or not, but it says take him to his father. He doesn't say take him to our father, okay? Because they may be having it out a little bit with their father too, kind of disgusted with their father and treating them this way, perhaps. So anyway, it came to pass when Joseph, verse 23, had come to his brothers, that they stripped him of his tunic. First thing they do, take off that coat, okay? And the tunic of many colors that was on him, they fall upon him, and they don't kill him, but they cast him into the pit, and the pit was empty. There was no water in it. I don't know what that means, except that Maybe he doesn't have anything to drink. He's not able to sustain himself for long in there. He's not going to drown. Okay, so anyway, they cast him in the pit. Bill? Yeah, 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 yeah. Put him in the pit, deprive him of water, let him die naturally and not, we're not going to kill him. But Reuben may not be present because he comes on the scene a little bit later on. Verse 25, they sit down to eat a meal, and while they're eating their meal, then the Ishmaelites come along and they're traders, and they're on their way to another far-off land, Egypt, in verse 25. And so Judah has this great idea. Let's don't kill him and all of that. Let's sell him into slavery and get rid of him that way. And we get a little bit of money that way, and then we'll come up with a story to hide it with our father. And that's what they do. And when Reuben comes back on the scene, he's a little dismayed and in shock and in grief because he can't find his brother. He's not in the pit. What happened to him? Well, somehow he learns, well, we sold him to the Ishmaelites. Okay? It also sells them to the Midianites, and they're just different names of the same group. Ishmaelites, Midianites. And so they sell him, and he's taken away. And then they took the tunic of many colors, which they despised. They couldn't stand that. Very happy to dip it in the blood of one of the young goats. And then they're going to take it to their father. Verse 32 is a very deceptive statement. They say to their father, "We have found this, the coat you gave him." Well, they said, do you know whether it is your son's tunic or not? Okay, so they're just kind of getting Jacob all involved and involved in, oh, this is Joseph's garment here. And so they make it look like, of course, the idea is that they let verse 33, it seems like the brothers don't tell the whole story. They let Jacob figure it out, what has happened, because it's got blood all over the garment. And so Jacob kind of fills in the pieces, all right? He recognized it and said, "It is my son's tunic. A wild beast has devoured him. Without doubt, Joseph is torn to pieces." Okay? It's interesting that the brothers don't say that, don't describe that. They let Jacob come to that conclusion. I guess it would just be more real for all of that. And Jacob tore his clothes. He's in great grief and mourned for his son many days. I mean, he's thinking, I'm not going to see Joseph again. I'm not going to see him ever again. He's dead. He's torn into pieces. And verse 35 is just awful. And all his sons and all his daughters arose to comfort him. But he refused to be comforted, and he said, "For I shall go down into the grave to my son in mourning." Thus his father wept for him. I mean, there's an indication that Jacob is saying, I'm never going to know happiness or laughter again. Okay? I'm getting up in years. I'm getting old. I'm going to die. And, my days of happiness and mirth are over. And I'm going to die in this way. And then verse 36, the Midianites sold him into Egypt to Potiphar, the officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard. So that answers the question. Meanwhile, what happens to Joseph? Joseph is sold. Think we're never going to see him again, but of course we know the rest of the story, and we know that we're going to hear a lot about Joseph. So this answers that question in verse 36, and the idea is there's more to come. There's more that's going to come. Yeah. Everybody had a role in this. Everybody except Benjamin. There's no indication that Benjamin was a part of this, but Reuben, even though he tried to spare Joseph's life, he's still involved, and he doesn't report the truth to his father, and so they're all involved. Yeah, yeah. He's a little bit wiser because he didn't resort to killing his brother, but something in Joseph. We've seen Reuben. We've seen some bad behavior on Reuben's part before, but now maybe a little older, a little wiser, and he does this. All right. Well, thank you for being a part of our class. Our time has gotten away from us, but that's okay. And chapter 38. If you get a chance before next week, read chapter 38. It's a different chapter. Okay. I mean, it's different. It's just an interesting event. And what we're getting here is we're getting a picture of there's problems in this family. There's a lot of problems in this family and a lot of people making bad choices. Hey, that's like our families, right? It's just like today, very much so. And so that's what you're going to see in chapter 38. Thank you all for being a part of our